Hi, I want to make a quick screencast of the steps that you'll go through analyzing your data. This is all shown inside of the document, but in case you prefer video, you might want to watch this. I'm going to try to go quickly, so please pause whenever you need to. The first thing we're going to want to do is clean up our data. So I'm going to scroll through and look for anybody who was, say, absent or data that didn't get completed. I'm going to highlight those rows, and I'm going to right-click and choose Delete Rows to remove them. And I'll probably do this for any data that's incomplete as well, so that when I scroll through, all of the starting and ending masses are included. Once I've got the data cleaned up, I want to calculate the percent change in mass using an equation. In order to do that, I'm going to start with the equal sign inside of the cell, and then I'll open a parentheses. The percent change in mass is the final minus the initial divided by the initial mass. So I'll click on the final mass, subtract the initial mass, close the parentheses, and then divide with a / by the starting mass. And I'll hit enter, and it will calculate that out. If the cell doesn't show having the percent symbol and instead shows a decimal number, I can change that by going to the Format, Number, and select percent. Now I'm going to take that calculation and I'm going to bring it through all of my different data sets. The box at the bottom right-hand corner will let me drag all the way down to the bottom of the data, and then release, and now all of those values will be calculated. So that's nice and quickly done. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the space to hold the data table for the averaged data. I'll want a column for the solution concentration in moles per liter. I'll want a column for the average change in mass of potato. And I'll want a standard deviation of that value. And then I'll just make those columns look nice by spreading them out just a little bit. And maybe bolding them. Okay. Next, we want to start moving that data and doing those calculations. To find the solution concentration, I'll just hit equals and select the first cell from the group of data from the first calculation and hit enter. To calculate the average, I'll go equals average. It's trying to auto-complete it. I'll open a parentheses and select the 5 values that I want to use, closing the parentheses. To do the standard deviation, I'll use STDEV, open the parentheses, and select the 5 cells that I want to do the standard deviation. This cell doesn't show as a percentage, so I'm going to change the format of that. At this point, I'm going to want to copy that calculation over to each of the sets of data. I don't want to drag, so I'll copy, and then I'll paste down 5 cells down. Oops. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see the calculation gets done each time. 5. You can kind of look to make sure that you're in the row that has the person's name, because that's the first row of the set of data. And sorry, that took a little longer than I expected. Oops, this one's in the wrong spot. Be careful here. 8.85, 9.95. Great. So I've gotten all of those. All of my average changes in masses are done, and all of my standard deviations are done. The next thing that I'll do is I want to condense this data down into a smaller table so that there's not so much space in there. To do that, I have to first convert these equations to points, to data. So I'm going to copy those 3 columns, and then I'm going to go to Edit, Paste Special, Values Only. It won't look like anything's changed, but if I look at the individual cells, what I'll see is that they are numbers instead of equations. Then I'm going to highlight those cells again, those columns, and I'm going to go to Data, Sort by column J, A to Z, so this will sort those, and all of the blanks will be sorted to the end. At this point, I can make somehow this changed from having the correct format, so I'll switch it back to format of 8%, and I'll clean up that data table so that it looks just like what I want it to look like. That looks pretty good. So there's a nice data table to include in my lab. The last thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to create a chart to show this data. To do that, I want to work with the concentration and the average change in mass of potato. I'm going to highlight those 2 columns, and I'll go to Insert, Chart. This will bring up the chart options menu, and we'll put a chart onto the screen. It's done its best to figure out what I want, and it's actually done a pretty good job. I just want to move it into a slightly better place next to my data. So here it's chosen to do a scatter chart, which is what I want. I need to move my face. It's chosen to do a scatter chart, which is what I want. It's used the data from columns J and K, and it's made the solution concentration the x-axis and the average change in mass of potato the vertical axis, which is what it should do. If you need to change any of those things, you can. Here it's using the column headings as headers and labels, which is useful. The last thing I'm going to want to do is to edit the series options to add a trend line. So I'll click on the trend line, which will fit a line to the data. I have some options there to change how it looks. But the most important one is that I want to use an equation to show inside of the legend what the equation for that graph is, because now I'll be able to calculate exactly what the x-intercept is and the prediction for what the tonicity of the potato is. That's all you need to do for your graph, apart from cleaning it up and making it look exactly the way you want it to.